I'm rolling here, camera.
Yep.
All right, let's do it.
When you're getting tired of pushing all these boulders up the hill and you're looking over your shoulder because creditors have no chill and they're so boastful on social, you're just looking for something real, tangible results. You know, something you can feel. This is the Brunch Budget podcast with your hosts, Pamela Capellet, a certified financial planner and accredited financial counselor, founder of Brunch Budget, Pockets Change, and Sea Change. She's here to take the bite out of your budget.
And your other host, Dialect, director of pedagogy at Pockets Change and co-founder of Sea Change. He's here to change the way we talk about finance.
Recorded live-ish from Greenhouse Studios deep in the heart of Planet Brooklyn.
It's
Brunchin' time! Hey y'all, so we're back.
We're back.
It's been a minute, and I hope you enjoyed season 1 of Brunch Budget. It was several years long, and this is the first episode of season 2. We were just talking before we started recording. Back in the day, seasons used to be mad long. You know, you had TV every day. You're watching your Young and the Restless or your Transformers, He-Man kind of shows back in the days. And, you know, they just ran every day. So, you know, the seasons were really long. The old Batman series from the 60s, they only had, I think, 3 seasons.
But there were like 80 episodes a season.
I'm saying, right?
I mean, we're like the days of our lives of podcasts. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, come
These
to
are the
Brunch
days
Budget
of our lives.
for the sands of the hourglass. You will be betrayed by your twin ex who faked their death and now has an eye patch.
And now you're in a coma. No, we're not in a coma. We're here.
We're actually we out the coma.
We're out the coma. It's
And
post-pandemic, still in a pandemic, but people want to get back to normal pandemic.
Yeah, I feel like it's, you know, you if you watch The Walking Dead, right? You woke up, it's a zombie apocalypse, and you were like, you know what? I'm going back to sleep.
These are the days of our lives.
Anyway, we should talk about money and stuff.
We should talk about money and stuff. It's season 2. It's official. We're here. We're back. And I think that our generation is about to face a third recession in our lifetimes, potentially.
Yeah, if you are Gen X, Y, Millennial, Z. Gen Z needs a name, right? Because millennials weren't originally millennials. They were called Gen Y after the Gen X thing. And then, like, now it's Gen Z. They need, like, to get a name. Hopefully it's not like the recession living people or the COVIDians or something. Like, I hope it's not all that. But so recession for our lifetime, it's possibly the third time happening. It's going to be happening.
And so, for the record, it is not a recession yet. I had someone ask us recently, like, so how do we know it's a recession? Do they announce it? And it was one of those moments of like, that's a really good question, actually. How do you know?
Oh man, we're not going to answer this on this show, so apologies. But like, what is the line between procession and recession, right?
That is a good question. And it's the kind of thing that, like, I feel like you call it in hindsight. Just like the last Great Recession. You called it in hindsight. All of the signs, so like things like the stock market having a downturn, being in a bear market, is a potential sign of a recession because stocks are considered a leading indicator, which means that things like the stock market going down indicate potentially an economic downturn. But there are plenty of bear markets where the stock market has gone down that did not lead to a recession.
Well, I was going to say, even the bear market thing is something that you're not really sure of until after it happens. Like, you know, everything drops really bad for one day. That doesn't mean it's a bear market. It's just a day.
At the very beginning of the pandemic, the market dropped as much as it's dropped now, and then it bounced right back. So who knows, right? Also, the average bear market only lasts for around a year.
Do you think, and I'm probably getting ahead of ourselves in like professional opinion kind of stuff, that this whole we're going to be in a recession, that recessions kind of partially start because word of mouth gets around that we're recessionizing?
It's hard to say. I haven't been around long enough to answer that.
Grown folks who want to come on the show
I know,
who've been
tell
through
us.
all the recessions.
You know what I will say, though, is what's really interesting about this time, this like pre-session time or whatever we want to call it, is inflation is the highest that it's been in a very long time. We're at historically high inflation rates. Inflation right after the Great Recession was either non-existent or around 2%. That's why you saw interest rates being super low. And now we're seeing inflation rates of like 7-8%, which we haven't really seen since like the 80s or 90s. Yeah.
So it's like it feels like like a team up of all the best of bad situations.
Totally, yeah. Stock market downturn, inflation, and also like in our lifetime, a fucking pandemic, y'all.
Right.
Like, let's not forget about that. Let's not forget about how a pandemic destroyed many businesses, made many jobs obsolete, made a lot of people just like not able to save. A lot of people have to tap into social services. And so just in this time right now, people are scared.
Right.
And I get it.
Confidence in what's going on has so much to do with everything. When we are talking about inflation, when we are talking about the economic downturns, a lot of it has to do with people not spending money. And people aren't spending money because they're worried about what's going on. So you start doing the rich people thing, you start hoarding, right? And then the rich people go, whoa, 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 we get to hoard, you don't get to hoard.
You have to be consumers.
Get the ball rolling. I can only buy so many yachts. You know, you have to buy the little stuff that's actually the engine of the economy. So then they do wild stuff to get us moving.
Okay, y'all.
So let's we said a whole bunch of stuff up here, and I guess we laid our thesis out. We're going to be talking about recessions, and in particular, the racism inherent in recessions. You know,
recessions are racist too.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like. Racism is always two things. Like, you know, you look at like anti-blackness in particular, right? There's this natural fear of the dark, right? That comes from lots of places and lots of myths and like eyeball things. And then that bumps up against these institutional methods of discrimination. And I think that's what you're seeing with this stuff right now. Like, when we are in a recession, that there are all these different things that start happening to folks and making life a little bit harder for folks. It's the natural stuff, meaning it's not natural, but the ways that racism had already started working on black people, on immigrants, on Latinos, where less access to credit, more likely to have been incarcerated, and in tough times, you don't want to hire untrustworthy people. So you're less likely to hire people who have bad credit or have been incarcerated, even if in kinder times, you're going to do better. But, and also, our show notes will show way too many studies done in the United States, in England, in Australia, kind of all the places where you've got like a whole bunch of white folks and the non-white folks are sitting there being like, wait, we made this whole thing go. Where when there are times of crisis, economic and otherwise, man-made and natural, people get more prejudiced. You know, there's a lot, we've talked before about how poor immune systems lead to different types of xenophobia, where you're afraid of new and different things.
Yeah, pregnant women are more xenophobic. I remember you taught me that.
Right, and then when you have this economic downturn, people are like, well, not only do I not trust other people, I'm only going to hire my family, my peoples, folks who are like me, people who look like me.
Yeah.
And that's very much concentrated in the wealth of white people. So, like, it's both of these things happening, that, like, there is this stuff that just happens as a consequence, and it's already the racism that makes it economically harder for black people, for people of color, oftentimes for immigrants as well. But also, people are now getting more anti-black.
Yeah, well, the scarcity thing, I mean, that is just to go back to why inflation is rising right now and why it's increasing, is from weforum.com. Why is inflation so high, and will it stay that way, right? The rise in inflation is being largely driven by post-pandemic demand and the war in Ukraine. Inflation is on the increase around the world, with food and energy prices hitting record highs. So we've been joking about the supply chain for the last year and a half, the last 2 years, right? And we're feeling the effects of it now. We're seeing the gas prices go up, we're seeing food costs go up, and it's hitting our wallets in a way that isn't incremental, right? It feels like it's all of a sudden. We saw mortgage rates double within a month. They were at like historic lows at under 3%, and then all of a sudden they're over 5% right now. So
easy, back it up. Let's can we unpack that a little bit for folks? Like, I don't think everybody really automatically readily knows, what does that mean when mortgage rates are doubling? Is that like does a house cost twice as much?
That is a good question.
It's not exactly that, but let's wrap.
Well, the thing about interest rates is they can affect what you're able to buy when it comes to a mortgage, right? So first of all, when you see interest rates rising, then that usually means that, hold on, let me stop. You caught me off guard with that question. I'm like, So what are you trying to get at with that question?
Just a real simple explanation of what it means for an interest rate to double on a mortgage, because it sounds like a $500,000 house is now $1 million house. So I just need a little cleaner explanation of what's going on.
Oh, okay. Not why the interest rates have risen.
No, but I mean that was interesting too. So like if it feels good to say a little bit afterwards, but like just the what.
Yeah. So I think we should talk about, God, inflation feels like its whole own episode.
It will be its own episode. So
Okay.
so feel free to be like, we'll talk about this in a whole episode. 'Cause
Okay,
I think
got
we
it.
need to do a whole inflation episode.
Yeah, totally. So we'll talk about the why in a whole episode, but what this means materially for you as a potential homeowner is, depending on how expensive the house is, your mortgage payment could be $500 to $700 a month higher compared,
With the same rate, right? Like if
no,
you're
with a different rate.
I mean, with the same price of the home.
Yeah, so a home could cost, let me just do the math right now. Fuck it, let's see.
Right, you're buying like.
I'm going to tell you right now. Let's pull up this mortgage calculator. Y'all, Google has a great mortgage calculator. Shout out to Google. I mean, don't shout out to Google.
Shout out to Google's mortgage calculator.
Okay.
Google did not sponsor this.
Google did not sponsor this. So, so $500,000 loan,
Right.
3% interest.
Mm-hmm.
Your monthly payment is $2,108, right? $2,100. 5% interest, $500,000 mortgage, same thing. Your monthly payment is now $2,684. It is $500 more.
And so that could be the difference between I'm a homeowner and now I got to keep renting.
Yeah, exactly. That could be the difference between we can live in this neighborhood or we have to live in that neighborhood.
Well, and that's if you can get a house at all. Right now, houses are incredibly scarce, and one of the things I was reading about is that houses under 500 grand across the country are getting next to impossible to buy. So we're talking about more like $750 million houses, and those percentages get even higher as the numbers rise.
Yeah, it's rough. It's rough.
When we talk about these recessions, I think one thing that's important to think about is we had a recent one. Most of us,
2008.
if you are listening to if you think that it's cool to listen to a podcast, you're probably old enough to remember what happened in 2008. And looking at the way that things went down, there was so much discrimination going on. Wells Fargo had this thing they called ghetto loans for trigger warning for all the terrible anti-blackness. They said mud people, like internal memos.
What?
This is what they were given these to. These were loans that they knew people would default on, that they were counting on.
That's what they were calling subprime mortgages.
Yeah.
Internally.
Yeah.
So they knew.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And not only that, a number of companies, including Wells Fargo, were found to use extremely discriminatory hiring practices. It wasn't just like the thing of I'm a small mom and pop and I'm going to hire my cousin instead of this person from around the way. It's big corporations putting it into their bylaws that they're going to do this. Government spending also decreases because you hear people talking all the time right now, right? We're worried about the economy. We're worried about this stuff. In New York City, we've increased the budget for the police, but slashed the education budget. I think $200 million.
Yep.
They cut off the education budget. And also, in these kind of times, government spending on schools, municipal safety, and even sewer systems goes down. When you think about what happened in Flint, Michigan, and in other cities around the country that didn't get as much publicity, it has to do with these things. They didn't defund the police, but they do defund everything else. And this is what causes, it exacerbates the zero-sumness of all of it. This is where people are saying, you will not replace us. Remember, that was a big thing around the time of the last recession, when you had your Tea Party type of cats talking about they will not replace us, they're taking our jobs. And that's going on right now too. You see people talking a lot about being replaced. There's racial replacement theory about white genocide going on. There's the anti-trans and anti-LGBTQ stuff going on, where they're talking about these people are replacing us in polite society. Folks are taking economic concerns and placing them in a social sphere, so now we're scared of everything.
Oh my God. That's too much.
Yeah, no, did we go too far?
That's too much. Well, I want to go a little further because one of the things that you have here too is the unemployment rate of black men compared to white men.
Yeah, so the thing I want to talk about with that is the long-term implications of these things. we did a lot of reading, and feel free to, if you want to dig into it. It's there's a lot of literature about how the recession affected everyone, and especially Black people. But one of the big things that I think about with the long-term stuff is 1 in 5 Black men were out of a job in 2008.
The last Great Recession.
And over the past 10-ish years, relationships between Black men and other groups have gotten much more difficult. People are much more distrustful of Black men, which, like, how could society get more distrustful of Black men? But they have been over the last 10 years than, say, think of from 1992 to 2002. Right, their level of distrust, and mind you, 1992 is when Snoop Dogg, everybody's favorite cuddly plush toy, was up on murder charges, right? And there was more trust in Black men then. We elected a Black man cosplayer as president in the early 90s. But nowadays, even a real Black man like Barack Obama caused stress and division. Even in the Black community, amongst Black men and Black women, there's all of this conversation about broke men this and men who are leaning on women that and can't take care of themselves. And a lot of it comes from the stereotypes around and the real reality that 1 in 5 Black men lost their jobs in these situations. Black wealth fell by 2011 by 50% from the gains made in the 1990s.
Wow, so all of the gains.
Basically all of the gains.
Yeah.
It's when we talk about Black wealth, it's because it's such small numbers, it's really easy to wipe out. And there are a number of periods throughout history. There was in the 60s where there was economic growth, and then the policies of the 80s wiped out a great ton of that. And talking about recessions that led that to happening. And then when we had the growth that happened in the 90s, and then end of the 2000s, wipes it out again.
Yeah, there's a stat that you found by 2009, 35% of Black households had zero or negative net worth.
And mind you, these net worth problems, they happen in white households, in Latino households, in Asian American households as well, but not nearly at the rates, in many cases, double the rates for Black households.
We were talking about leading indicators earlier, right?
Yeah.
This is the kind of thing where, we talk about this stat that, white families have on average 10 times the wealth of Black families, right? But the things that they're doing to Black people now, they're going to do to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the, that number actually is expanded. I think it's like 13 to 15 times.
Post-pandemic?
Yeah, post-pandemic. Well, I think that's the estimate, that it's like 13 to 15 times now. But that is one of the things, is that when we talk about oppression of Black people, it's important to know, because Black people are people, and even if you're not Black, you should care about people. I don't know how much I have to say that people have to care about people, but we're here, right? But remember that Black people have been the guinea pigs. And I'm not just talking Tuskegee. Remember that the whole Nazi thing came off of cribbing the notes from Jim Crow, and all of the ways that they discriminate against Black people, that they use to hurt Black people, they will be hurting everybody else with. Just like they didn't want to tip Black waiters, and now they don't want to tip your white waiter either.
I think it's time to go to tea time.
Yeah, let's have a break, have a little bit of tea. Tea time who's Tea Time sponsored by?
Tea time.
Is Tea Time sponsored by anybody? Can we go get a sponsor for this one?
Is Tea Time sponsored by the former U.S. Secretary, Treasury Secretary Larry Summers?
Sure, I was hoping more like Larry Sanders, Larry...
Colonel Sanders.
Well, I was going to go on different Larry, like Larry Bird, maybe Larry Bird. Larry Bird's mustache.
Yeah, Tea Time is sponsored by Larry
Larry
Bird's mustache today.
Larry Bird's mustache, please get in
Does he
contact
have a
with us.
mustache?
He had a little one back in the day.
Oh, okay, so it's like it's a small sponsorship.
It's a
Okay, I
small
got you.
sponsorship, yes. like his mustache, not like his achievements. He's a great pillar in the white community.
Wow.
What? It's not a bad thing to say.
You are not wrong.
Did I say something out of turn? I thought that was a nice thing.
Okay, so Tea Time is a new segment that we have. What's Tea Time dialect?
Well, Tea Time, since this is Brunch and Budget, and we do want to be able to relax and talk about these kind of heavy issues, we want to make sure that you have something that is able to hold you down. When you meet with Pam for a brunch, you're going to have some food to be able to break bread, to understand what's going on. And that was weird. I just had a little cut off.
Oh yeah, I heard that too. It's okay.
Yeah, but we're still rolling. Let's just
Okay,
go
yeah,
back.
keep on going.
Yeah.
When you break bread with Pam, you're able to talk about difficult subjects because breaking bread allows you to build community, allows you to make connections, and sometimes things get a little bit rough. Things might make your throat close up. You might need a little bit of tea. You might need a little bit of something extra in that tea for you to get through what's going on in these tough times.
You mean honey dialect?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about is honey, dear. So today's tea time is going to be talking about inflation. And yeah, I know we're going to do we're going to do a whole episode on inflation where we really talk about inflation, but it's inflation and how it's connected to unemployment.
Oh, you're right. It's inflation and unemployment.
We should have done one of those things where you say inflation while I say unemployment, and then I say
potato, tomato.
No, we can't call it off. So when we're talking about inflation, everybody's worried about what to do about it, right? And
how do you fix it?
how do you fix inflation?
How does inflation go back down?
Just like
right?
bust the bubble, right? And it's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
So this cat, Larry Summers. Larry Summers.
The former sponsor of this segment.
The former sponsor of this segment and father of the person who saved us from the hellmouth.
There you go.
He had to say that.
So here's the thing. He had to say what?
Okay, here's the thing. We're
So
jumping all over each other on this segment.
I know we are. This is not. Should we start over? Let's
No,
start.
no, it's fine.
Okay.
We'll just cut that whole part after we said what tea time is, and then just go to this part we're gonna say now.
Okay, that sounds good. So, do you want to do it?
Go ahead. You got
Okay. Got it. So, former U.S. Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, this is from a MarketWatch article, says there needs to be a surge in unemployment to curb inflation. Now, okay, let's pause because what? I did not know that unemployment or a surge in unemployment led to decreasing inflation.
So it's actually a pretty simple thing if you look at your like Econ 101 math supply demand stuff. There's this idea that if we have a lot of people who have money, enough money to buy necessities and maybe a couple luxuries,
right?
Then the demand for things is
high.
Is high, but you know
the supply is low.
It makes things cheaper.
Makes things more expensive.
Well, it's going to be making things cheaper because we have money and we can buy these things. And they're saying that yes, you're right. It makes things more expensive, which makes the companies happy because things are being bought at these high rates. And then when we have people with limited unemployment, right? You know, where they're buying all these things, then the prices just keep on rising. And if nobody's unemployed, then things are going to get really expensive. And that's going to hurt you, middle class person who already have a job, or rich person who already has wealth. So in order to make things cheaper for you, rich person or middle class person, we're going to take these poor people who are buying the stuff that we're buying and say, look, you need to be poor. You need to stop buying the stuff that we're buying.
So we're going to take away your job.
So we're going to take away your job because education didn't work. People tried to educate us. I know that you've gone in this class where people said, people are buying all these Nike shoes and that's why it's ruining their lives and that's why they're poor, right? You know, someone has told you some nonsense like that. People buying all these lattes and that's why they're poor. People were buying stuff and giving themselves things that they needed.
That's what they told us to do.
But it was happening too much.
Too much.
So it was making things become more expensive because of the high demand. So now, if we make folks poorer, it'll bring things down. So it's basically a scam that works out for a lot of heads because the way that our economic system works, it's, you know, I hate this to be like, oh, capitalism did this because America isn't exactly capitalism. What's the capitalism for the poor, rugged individualism for the poor, and socialism for the rich kind of stuff. There's all these mixed things going on. But the way that we have things in this country is such that there needs to be an underclass. The underclass needs to be paying in. The underclass needs to be subjugated. The underclass needs to stop doing stuff so that everyone else can live. That's the tea.
That's a tea. Wait, we didn't get to sacrifice ratio.
Oh,
Can
yes,
we do
please.
another take of that?
Yeah,
that
sure.
was very long.
Yeah. I think we can just take from where we went now and then talk about sacrifice ratio.
Okay.
Before we stop talking about this tea time stuff, is, you know, they want folks to be more poor, and this is the way that the economy is supposed to be balanced. So it sounds like I'm just making up some supervillain manifesto, right? This is backed by not only the data, but they have policies around this.
Yeah, well, here's what's interesting. So I didn't finish the sentence, right? So this former U.S. Treasury Secretary, Larry Summers, said there needs to be the surge in unemployment. Federal Reserve policymakers say it doesn't need to happen for price growth to cool off. And price growth, I guess, is how they're referring to inflation right now, is
Right.
prices increasing. But there is this term that I came across in this Market Watch article that I've never seen before called the sacrifice ratio, which is basically what you described, Dialect, is like, hey, poor people, we're going to sacrifice you so that we can lower inflation.
I mean, it sounds like something like when you would go on Twitter and say something dumb so your friend doesn't get ratioed. And you just like jump in the way.
You're like, oh, no, don't. No, but here's the thing. He specifically said that he thinks that unemployment needs to go, it was just under 6 million in May, 6 million people unemployed. It needs to increase to roughly 16 million to decrease inflation by around 1%.
So after a couple of years of hearing people say that nobody wants to work anymore, we're told that the way that we're going to save the economy is by putting 10 million people out of work.
Yeah, that's the T.
That's the T. Okay, I feel like it's getting a little heavy here, so can we play a little music?
Let's play a song.
Let's play some music. We're going to get to a song here with Brunch Budget. We play indie songs that pertain to the stuff that we're talking about. If you've got a song that you want to play with us where you're talking about financial matters or lifestyle stuff that probably finances have something to do with, please holler at us. We're very findable. This first song is coming out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Going to our neighbors up in the north. This is a crew called the Hometown Herverts. This is a collaboration between DijahSB, A Harmony, and Phoenix Pagliacci, like the great clown Pagliacci. And they've got a song called Recession. So check that out, and we'll be back in a minute.
Since you hold there for 1 second, it's a good natural stopping place, so I can stop and save.
Oh, yeah, cool.
How long was that, by the way?
Half an hour.
That was probably half an hour, right?
Yeah, about 26:30.
That's good. I mean, we did the tea time like 3 times.
Yeah, no, there's plenty in there that will be trimmed because there was the mortgage rate doubling. There was
Oh, yeah.
there was a little bit
back on
there.
A couple things,
Yeah, so I have that, and then
so
the tea
weird to
time
not be doing
drop.
it live.
I know. Well, this is what we're trying to practice. We're trying to be like,
exactly.
let's say it right. Let's do all the stuff. Let's not, because we would have these shows and we're like, oh man, you forgot to say that one thing. It flowed fine, but it's really an important thing we missed. So we're trying to make sure we're not missing those important things.
So the rhythm.
Yeah.
I'm still feeling out the rhythm. I'm like, I guess I could stop talking if I needed to. It's so weird.
Me too. Well, I also,
It's so weird.
I didn't really have a button for this tea time one, so that's why I kind of just droned on. And that was cool that you came and cleaned it up.
Yeah, I mean, I would say better to keep talking and finish whatever your thought is rather than stop, because it could be like, oh, well, this was almost a good take, but then you didn't finish it because we could have just trimmed a couple sentences in the middle or something like that. You know?
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so I would say finish whatever it is, and then we'll chop out if need be.
So what's the second segment?
As we're getting ready for the second segment, let's go ahead and stop the video.
We're
and
going to
then,
read the rest
and
of the
then we'll
well.
start it again.
Yeah,